to be the best deck in the format, well tuned to beat a field full of the mirror, which they did. But now we're coming home to roost, baby.
Burton had a pretty gross 7-card hand into a pretty exciting 6.
Yeah, Burton 6 is hot here. Now, if I'm Burton, I'm maybe thinking about putting back this Tour brand. It's obviously like pretty powerful, but going Dodger, Robber, Steamkin, some combination of that into Embercleave on the play. Like, how do you get out of that? How do you get out of that if you're playing this Team of Reclamation deck with no spot removal?
That's a tough one. That's a tough one. You see Burchett looking at a hand that they would be thrilled about in a Reclamation mirror. And it's largely what you signed up for, so I suppose Burchett's going to keep it here, but Growth Spirals, Lands, and Shark Typhoon.
I mean, Shark Typhoon's obviously a great card, but in this scenario, I think making a 2/2 Shark on turn 3 might not be good enough. Now, the Blast Zone is the secret killer here. If Autumn ends up winning this game, I think it's going to be leveraging that Blast Zone to be able to kill either the 2-drops and Steamkin and Robber, or if Burton draws a string of 1-drops that he plays here, but this does not look great.
Ether Gust off the top, very relevant for Burchett. We see Runaway Steamkin into Robber of the Rich, coming down from Burton's side.
Yeah, not a whole lot of Ether Gusts in these Team of Rec decks. One of a very nice handful of pickups for Autumn here. Autumn looks like that they're going to go for a Growth Spiral, though, instead of the Ether Gust, perhaps just trying to build up a little bit of a mana advantage before going for the Ether Gust, and finds a Wilderness Reclamation off the top. That's huge.
Yeah, and the Growth Spiral, there's another Triumph entering there. There's still the Blast Zone. So, yeah, Burchett's going to Reclamation into having Gust up, into having potential Shark up. And something I really like about this is a Robber of the Rich hit can matter a lot in a matchup that's about attrition. But Burton hit a Wilderness Reclamation. That's not going to do anything for him.
I was going to let him untap all his lands at the end of turn. You're right, though. It doesn't really do a whole lot. There's a lot of relatively dead cards that Brandon hits off of Robber. The more important part of Robber of the Rich in this matchup is that it has haste. It's a 2-mana 2/2 with haste. That means it's going to come down swinging. It's going to occasionally snag something like Ether Gust or Opt or Growth Spiral, and it's going to give you like a little bit of a minor advantage. But really, that's not what you're trying to do. You're not trying to win the longer games. You're trying to shorten the length of the game as much as possible.
Here is the Reclamation from Burchett. They're on 13, so we go back to Brandon Burton. Picks up an Anax. Been hanging on to Embercleave for a minute. We've seen Burton play very pensively in these spots, very aware of all the things that can go wrong in these combats with the Embercleave.
Yeah. Brandon here, I think, just going to go for a post-combat Anax. Embercleave here is a little dicey, but I mean, it might just be worth going for. At the same time,
across, Robert just exiles a land, so Burchett gonna pass, and now here's an attempt at the Embercleave.
Yeah, now this has to target something that's not Steamkin, or the Ether Gust needs to target the Embercleave itself when it's on the stack. I think Sandy understands that putting it on any creature is likely going to be lights out if it sticks, and there's no real reason to worry too much about it. But wow, picks up Mystical Dispute. That actually is a great alternative play here for Autumn.
Yeah, never mind that Gust. We'll save that for later. Mystical Dispute counters Embercleave on the way down. There's still a lot of damage coming through, though. Burchett falls to 7.
And that's the big deal here. Autumn is trying to claw back into the game, really needs some help. But how do you feel about hard cast Shark Typhoon, untap with Growth Spiral Ether Gust backup? How does that sound? Is that something you'd be interested in?
Well, that's interesting, but I'm very intrigued by cranking Blast Zone to 2 in passing turn.
Ooh, I like that too. That sounds great.
Burchett kind of has a few options there from 7. Got to play it carefully.
No, that's really, really smart, actually. Burchett can crank it up to 2, and then gets to untap and can crack the Blast Zone and still cast Growth Spiral and Ether Gust based on the leftovers.
So here is Blast Zone going to 2. Burchett can even Growth Spiral before the Reclamation trigger.
Right. Now, this might be the one that actually gives Autumn the crown here, as they're trying to find a way to stifle the aggression from this mono red aggro deck. They're at 7, but it looks like they might have the tools at their disposal to get the job done. We'll have to wait and see.
Growth Spiral into negates. Now, keep in mind, mono red aggro, there's a heavy emphasis on aggro. If you're used to burn decks, this isn't that. That negate can catch a couple cards, but mostly this is a creature deck. You see Anax Hardened by the Forge showing up. That's going to prompt a response. Maybe 2. Blast Zone goes off, take care of the Steamkin and the Robber. Burchett considering whether to Gust.
I like a Gust here. That Anax is one of the better draws in the deck, so by tagging with a Gust, you're basically saying, hey, do you want to draw that again next turn? And the answer is almost certainly yes, just because the average draw is so mediocre.
So Anax goes to the top, and now Burchett is much more confident in a giant shark being effective.
Right, and with the shields down and knowing the top card of the opponent's deck, Burchett can just make a 10-10 shark, which can threaten to close the game out in just a few short turns. And with negate backup, you're not really scared of Embercleave anymore.
I'm so into 10-10 shark.
Yeah.
There is a replacement Blast Zone. Burchett considering using that for the Dodger. The Dodger can become unblockable.
Right, but it's perfect information, right? So the most you're going to take next turn is 1 damage. And I think 10-10 Shark just actually getting aggressive here might be pretty cool. With that said, it's like the Anax can be pretty scary. I just think with negate, it's just worth making a giant thing.
Dodger gets unblockable.
Roger Dodger.
Blast Zone is just going to go off now. Burchett's not interested in dying to this Dodger.
Yeah. Couple more lands for Burchett, though. Not really what they wanted, but the 6/6 Shark here is looking like it might be enough to stifle the development and the damage output from Brandon.
And the hedge is really interesting because if you do end up attacking with a 10-10 Shark there, you do lose to some creature spells. You know, Torbran comes to mind. You cover the Dodger, but then the Anax just is a 5-power creature that does +2.
Yeah, but you're not wrong. I like to take the aggressive lines against red-based decks, but it's possible that it's just not worth it. And obviously, there's a huge payoff here. Burchett
Here's the other thing. This deck sometimes has one spell that dramatically changes the outcome.
Yeah, this Expansion Explosion doesn't even have to be for the full amount. Burchett can choose to do it for 4 less than max and still draw roughly 6 cards, holding up the negate, and maybe finds another 2-mana spell to play off the top. Probably going to target the Anax just to reduce the amount of pressure and potential combinations that could beat them.
Explode Anax for 7. 7 cards off the top. There's a backup explosion. There's an Uro, another Shark Typhoon. This hand is looking pretty made.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's not really a whole lot necessary at this point. The Expansion Explosion plus Wilderness Reclamation is the 1-2 punch the deck wants and needs, and now Burton has seen the writing on the wall. It's not like he's got a bunch of lightning strikes in his deck, folks. This mono red deck is very creature oriented. If the creatures get swept under the table, well, so do your hopes and dreams taking down this tournament.
Land off the top, not going to do it. Burton packs him up, and that is a huge game 1 win for Autumn Burchett because look at how much help they are getting from the sideboarding here.
Oh, yeah. No, it's just so much money coming in and so much trash going out. Get all these negates out. Get all these mystical disputes out of my deck. Ain't nobody got time for that, Ryan.
Get these sweepers. Get these giant blockers in. A lot of heat on the way in. Trash for treasure.
What did you just say? What?
Trash.
Yeah, I caught that part.
Trash for.
Okay.
Treasure.
Treasure. Are you saying it funny on purpose?
Saying what funny on purpose?
Treasure.
Players looking at opening hands for game number 2 here.
You're such a troll. I have no idea if you're being serious or not.
Really interesting mana base from Burchett. Couple Stomping Grounds and Castle Vantress. Pretty awkward against a red deck, but Ether Gust, Brazen Borrower, those are nice spells.
Wow, Sandy Dog about to put a light up the stage back. This might be the most disciplined mulligan I've ever seen.
I love it.
Chooses to keep the one land that is just always going to be right or good versus bottoming the light of the stage, which if you put back a land, you're going to want to draw the land off the light of the stage. So
yeah, you want both these 3-drops. You want to be able to cast them.
Right, and if you light up the stage on 2, chances are you want to play the spell you find off light up the stage, which means that your 3-drop is predetermined, but playing Anax or Sabira is a little bit better.
We saw some really heads up lighting up the stage by Burton earlier in the tournament. As someone who's cast a lot of light up the stage, I got a lot of respect for the way Burton navigates that card. Yeah,
most people treat it like chart a course, and you should really treat it more like a brainstorm, you know?
Yeah.
I started winning a lot more with my light up the stage decks when I stopped casting light up the stage at the first possible moment.
Right. Yeah, it's easy to focus on how much worse it is when the cost isn't reduced, trying to take advantage of when the card is cheaper. It's more important to focus on actually leveraging the cards that you hit.
Right. So Autumn developing here, played an opt, kind of sculpting the next few draws, but has a bevy of 2-mana interaction with multiple instances of Brazen Bar as well as an Ether Gust, but only access to 1 blue mana right now.
See Burton making land drop number 4, Fervent Champion and Anax ready to go. Burchett still hanging on to all the spells from the opener, Gust and 2 borrowers. In fact, a 3rd borrower picked up. Time to get busy with some petty thefts, I imagine. There's one on Anax pre-combat. Now that's relevant. You don't want the Anax to be registered as attacking creature because that makes Embercleave 4 mana here.
Yeah, and getting the Embercleave down, even if like you bounce whatever was the target for Brazen Bar, you really just want to bounce Anax, right? That's the big deal.
Yep.
Ooh, that's a neat one.
Little Soul Seer.
Yeah. Card's cool. That's all I gotta say about it. It's just cool.
I just like it when cards like that show up in Constructed, because that card is not exciting.
No, it is not. Now, I played a lot of Fight with Fire in the sideboard of like my mono red aggro decks back in the day, and I don't think that I ever did the kicker on them in those decks. And Soul Seer is very similar in that like it's just a burn spell that does a very weird specific thing, but it is interesting to see it in these other decks.
You just got to deal 5 sometimes.
Yeah, they can have Planeswalkers too, right? That's one of the cool things about it, I think.
Yeah.
I remember
kill Teferis and Narsets.
Yeah, Fight with Fire not being able to kill Planeswalkers was a huge tilt. Unless you kicked it, which then that was like tilting. That was tilting for like a completely different reason.
Yeah, the thing you were just saying you never get to do.
Yeah.
Pair of Steamkins pre-combat for Burton. It's going to grow the Anax to a 5. Burchett, notably with just 1 blue mana. Remember, this was a double Stomping Ground Blast Zone opener, and this mountain is not doing any favors. Interesting choice between one of these 2 mana spells or just jamming Nightpack Ambusher. Burchett lands on Ambusher. Doesn't deal with Anax, but with Burton tapped this low, this play makes a lot of sense.
Oh, for sure. This is a pretty heads-up play from Burchett in one way to help leverage the awkward mana that they have to potentially finding a way to claw into the board state. Now, that Nightpack Ambusher likely means that Burchett's not going to be casting a spell on their own turn for a little while. This Triome probably not even going to come down this turn, so that Burchett can play the Seer and one of the 2 mana piece of interaction with the blue mana off the Gust or a Brazen Borrower.
Yeah, Burchett's options really taxed by the mana here. It's so frustrating, right? Because you really do want to play that Triome so you can start 2-spelling with these blue spells.
Right. I just think that it's possible that you're going to have to double spell on combat next turn. I mean, just look at what's coming at you next turn. If you do nothing, you have a 3/3 wolf and a 4/4 ambusher. But look, I mean, Autumn disagrees, and that's okay too. Maybe
You
just
still
the soul
you
seer's
still
enough.
make a wolf and 1 spell here,
Right.
and you get to 2 spell for the next 2 turns. Is the payoff?
Sure, and maybe just Soul Seer is just good enough on the Anax that like you just don't need to cast anything else, right?
Yeah, it was a tough decision. I like what you were saying, but I am pretty convinced of Burchett's play as well.
Well, yeah, Burchett's way better than me. just on the level, just not gonna sugarcoat it. I know a lot of little things about a lot of things that don't matter, and Burchett knows a lot more about those little things. That's about as best I can put it. You don't see me hoisting a Mythic Championship trophy, you know?
Burton's going to dump the hand, Robber the Rich, and then here is that Subira. Now, with an empty hand, you care a little bit less about Steam Cannon, but getting to 4 is a bit relevant because Anax is on the table, and a 4-power creature is good for 2 tokens if it dies.
Yeah, here's the fear, though, that I had. I think that this means that Autumn kind of has to interact with the Steamkin instead of the Anax, and now you just have 5 attackers coming across, and you can still only play 1 card. And now there's 2 blockers. They're probably not all coming across, but at the same time, like, this is still pretty terrifying. And I wouldn't be surprised if Sandy's just said, you know, screw it, put everything in the red zone. If you block to do trades, you get a bunch of 1/1s, and if you block to prevent damage, you take a lot from the other creatures that are still surviving.
The wolf token being a 3/3 is a really big deal.
For sure.
Though Burchett, might need some help off the top if Burton lands on this attack. You know, all the creatures are highlighted, and they're all coming in.
Yeah, I mean, this makes a ton of sense because now, no matter how Autumn blocks, they're basically putting themselves in a position where they need to trade with Anax or it's going to be really problematic. And Burton's fine with that trade because that just means he gets a lot of satyrs. And if Autumn doesn't have the sweeper on the next turn, it might be a little too much for him to handle.
Burchett looking at Wolf on Anax, Ambusher on Steamkin. That would mean taking 5 and going to 6. Would also mean Burton getting 3 more Satyr tokens.
Yeah, losing the Steamkin and the Anax is a pretty big deal. But dealing 5 and generating 3 more creatures that can still attack and block, especially with that Castle Embereth hanging out, this might be a little too much for Autumn to deal with.
Yeah, the castle for sure a big deal. Back to Burchett, finds an Uro.
That's interesting.
It's a little tough because casting the Uro means no wolf.
Yeah, I think it's just pass, make a wolf, and then you go for Gust Seer and hope it's enough. But that's kind of why I wanted to play the Blast Zone last turn, so you could like Seer Gust or Seer Bounce, and that would have left the Satyr not making as many tokens because it would have got exiled with the Soul Seer, you know?
Blast Zone is the land. Here's a wolf token. Burchett considering some action while Burton is tapped out.
Oh, yeah,
I imagine it's on the Subira around the ability. It is Soul Seer on that one.
Oh, I'm sorry. Soul Seer doesn't exile. It makes it lose indestructible. I'm misremembering the card. I apologize for that.
Ember Cleave off the top for Burton. Woof. This combat just got really interesting. So the floor with the Castle Embereth, that's intriguing. You get 2 blocks. Some satyrs come in. You could attempt to put Burchett to 2. Ember Cleave does mean you can't. You could Steamkin and Ember Cleave this turn, but you can't do the Castle Embereth with either of them.
I think what Brandon might do is just attack with everything and see if Autumn plays anything before combat. Because there might be like some precedent. I mean, there's also a Shark Typhoon hanging out that the robber can cast. I don't, and maybe Autumn wanted to prevent that. It's like kind of scary-ish.
And so everybody comes across. It would be very funny to see the mono red player cast Shark Typhoon.
Yeah. Too bad. I don't think that Robert gives you the ability to cycle it because it's not.
It's not in your hand. All right. So Wolf on Robber, Ambusher on Satyr. Do you castle or do you cleave? Looks like it's castle.
Yeah, it's castle. I mean, if you cleave, it's probably getting countered or killed or bounced or whatever. Now, at the very least, you put Autumn to 2. You might be able to squeak in some damage with a haste creature or something, and you're really just restricting the different combinations of cards that Autumn can have to contain your side of the battlefield. For the most part, Autumn has survived and is now time to thrive.
Petty Theft cleaned up a Satyr, kept Burchett alive. They went to 2, go back to their turn. The Robber did end up trading with that Wolf token, so a little bit of lost material for Burchett. They're going to start with the front half of Uro. Finds Growth Spiral and puts in a land. So that means no Wolf token this turn.
Yeah, but life total going back up, definitely a big deal. And with Ether Gust at the ready, it's going to be hard for Burton to punch through this damage. Might be a rebuilding turn. Just play Seamkin, Scorch Spitter. Next turn, go for the lethal attack, especially if you draw a land, because then you can Ember Cleave and activate Castle. Whoa.
So it's an attack. I like this quite a bit, actually, because if Burchett just has nothing, you get to cleave on the unblocked token, put Burchett to 1, and then cast Scorch Spitter. Because there are not cards to escape Uro. This is betting on Burchett having nothing.
Yeah, but I mean, it's a fine bet because you're in such a weird position that Uro is only going to get scarier as the game progresses.
Well,
so you got to try to find a way for it to end sooner rather than later.
You could bet on Burchett having nothing or play a different line that loses to anything, right? Ooh,
right.
This is a little interesting. Looks like the Cleave is trying to trade with the Ambusher, so a longer-term planning strategy still.
Yeah, I think that has to do with the Blast Zone on 1, because if you do put Burchett to 1 and then play Scorch Spitter, the Blast Zone does make sure that specifically doesn't kill you.
Gotcha. Yeah, once that's not lethal, yeah, that was an oversight in that line. Blast Zone would just get you.
Sure. This play is still fine, though. I like trying to trade with the Nightpack Ambusher here. And then, because you still get the Scorch Spitter, you can still suit it up next turn for 3 mana if you want to.
Here is Ether Gust on the Cleave. That one is a nightmare no matter how you navigate this turn.
You gotta just put it back on top, right? Like, what are you trying to draw? What else are you looking for?
Casting Scorch Spitter post-combat, you're losing a Satyr. Like, the only comparable effect, I think, is Torbrand, or maybe like a Dodger to go with your castle.
Yeah, it might just be Dodger, honestly. Or, yeah, I don't know. Some sort of burn spell, maybe another Kabira. Oh, no! What happened?
Well, Burton passed the turn. Whether it was intentional or not, that I could not tell you.
I can't imagine that was intentional. I feel he was like dragging the card to play it in the turn pass. He must have hit enter on accident at some point during the combat or shift enter or something to skip the combat. That's wild.
The difference is, could have had a Scorch Spitter, though, as you pointed out, that was vulnerable to Blast Zone. Torburn comes off the top. Now the Spitter will grow it.
It could have been intentional. I don't want to overlook that, because putting a counter on the Runaway Seamkin is a big deal.
Right. And just like the Spitter being vulnerable to the zone, not necessarily great to get it out.
Mm-hmm.
But Burchett accumulates a Wolf, not getting attacked this turn, fires off Growth Spiral, cranks up, or actually uses Blast Zone, get rid of Scorch Spitter.
Yeah, I love that, actually. I absolutely love that. Just playing max defense, also trying to fill the graveyard so that they can bring back the Euro faster. and it looks like they have enough food in the graveyard for it, and still has access to an Ether Gust. So we're churning, we're moving on all cylinders here, and you got to feel for Sandy Dog. Is this the end of his undefeated run here in the finals of our 4th championship qualifier here on the SCG Tour Online?
Burchett managed to win game number 1 against Burton despite being on the draw. Huge upgrades in the sideboarded games, and they are this close to taking down our final championship qualifier here on Season 1 of the SCG Tour Online. Burton's going to go for a Torbran. There's just too many blockers, and if Burchett decides they care, the Ether Gust is still hanging out. And this is a waking nightmare for mono red players everywhere. Casting Torbran and having no good attacks.
No good attacks and no real prospects on the following turn either. Just like having your best card and still needing to get lucky. And your opponent has one of the best hate cards ever printed, an Ether Gust, at the ready. What can you even do?
It is rough. You see the Blast Zone gets charged too. Storm's Wrath off the top. Yeah, Burchett loses some material casting that, but with a backup Ether Gust and an attacking Uro,
I'm in.
Why not?
I'm in. You son of a bitch, I'm in. Okay, real quick. Torbran says red the cards you control, right? I want to make sure this isn't about to be the scariest pun in history.
Yeah, Torbran is not completely nightmarish in the red mirror. It's in fact the best card in the red mirror.
Okay. Well, Burchett takes an alternate line that is super safe, uses the Blast Zone to blow up the Steamkin. He's going to crank in here for at least 10 damage.
Uro gains some life, Burchett up to 10.
If you're Sandy, you might actually have to trade Torbran here for that Nightpack Ambusher. I can't see... I mean, obviously... I don't see many ways out no matter what you do.
I like hanging on to the Torbran. Torbran Embercleave is like the only way you could theoretically win, right?
Right. You have to imagine if he saw the hand from Autumn, though, he would have snap blocked in a moment's notice. But I don't know that it actually matters. I feel like Autumn just has it all covered. 1-2 games on the draw.
I mean,
impressive stuff.
A block there is a commitment to losing 2 turns later instead of one turn later.
You're right. You're right. Torbran is your way out. Unfortunately, that door is closed.
Torbran's axe just not quite good enough. Got Robber's Bow, Satyr's Sword, Torbran's axe, but this fellowship is a bit shy of completing its voyage.
Did you say Anax's hammer?
I did not.
He's definitely got a hammer. That guy's got a spear. Little satyr boy.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not exactly a sword, is it? And the satyr's not exactly a king. Thinking. Good use of the thinking emote by Burton.
Maybe considering holding on to the Anax for a turn. I don't see what that really accomplishes. Maybe he's just trying to soak all of his spotlight while he can because he knows he's on camera here on the SCG Tour Online. Say hi to Mom, Sandy. It's time to go home.
I don't know if it amounts to any bluff equity. There's really no bluffing involved in this game. You either got the stuff that wins or you don't, and the difference between the delta between your best and your worst cards in red is so wide.
Wow, what a interesting choice there.
Well, that means that Embercleave couldn't be cast in this combat.
Well, I just meant targeting that instead of Torbran, just because I'm pretty sure it's because the robber has reach.
Robber of the Reach?
No. You did not just say that out loud.
I did. I'll do it again.
Sandy, find a way to snuck 2 damage in. But I think that Autumn's got lethal on the following turn. They're playing fast as all get out.
Anax shows up, but so does Brazen Borrower. So you get 2 blocks, 9 comes across. So Burchett is 1 off.
Does the ambusher math change if you play a second ambusher for Pumpskis?
Oh, it does. You're right. That is just a Lord. So Burchett does have lethal.
Turns out, you're dead! On Burchett becomes our 4th winner here. Our SCG Tour Online Championship qualifiers here, ahead of our first seasonal championship that we're going to have tomorrow. It's tomorrow, everybody. Don't forget.
It is tomorrow, same time, same channel. Autumn Burchett crosses the finish line with that second Nightpack Ambusher. And honestly, I lose to one copy so often that I forget that the second